Ladies and gentlemen, Christmas is often seen as a time for family, friends, and celebration. We are told that happiness comes from being surrounded by others, gifts, and parties. But what if the true gift this season is something else entirely? What if spending Christmas alone could be the best decision you ever make? Being alone is not the same as feeling lonely. Many people confuse the two, believing that if they are not surrounded by others, they are incomplete or unhappy. But true solitude is not an absence, it is a presence. It is the presence of your own mind, your own thoughts, and your own ability to understand yourself. When you spend time alone, you remove the noise and the distractions that usually fill your life. You stop listening to the endless demands of others, the constant comparisons, the expectations of what you should do or how you should feel. Instead, you face yourself directly. You meet your own mind without excuses, without masks, without pretense. This kind of presence is rare in everyday life because most of the time, we are too busy looking outside of ourselves for approval, comfort, and entertainment. Solitude gives you the chance to look inward, to see clearly what is happening in your own thoughts, emotions, and reactions. When you are alone, you begin to understand that your mind is not something to be feared or controlled by others. You start to see that the value of your day, your feelings, and even your happiness is not dictated by who is around you. The constant chatter of people, the noise of social events, the expectations of families or friends, these things often pull us away from what is truly important, our own understanding of ourselves. Being alone gives you space to notice your habits, your impulses, and your patterns of thinking. It allows you to question whether your desires are your own, or if they have been imposed on you by the world. In solitude, you can start to recognize the difference between what is essential and what is superficial. Many people fear being alone, because it forces them to confront themselves. But confronting yourself is not something to avoid, it is something to embrace. The mind can become sharp, focused, and calm when it is not constantly being distracted. Solitude allows you to practice patience with yourself. You can watch your thoughts rise and fall, without immediately reacting to them. You can notice anger without being consumed by it, fear without letting it control you, and longing without giving it power over your choices. This awareness is freedom, because once you see your mind clearly, you can choose how to respond, rather than being swept away by impulses. Being alone also allows you to develop independence. When you rely too much on others for entertainment, comfort, or validation, you give away your power. Solitude teaches you that you are enough, that your own company can be fulfilling, and that happiness does not need to come from outside. When you learn to enjoy your own presence, you discover a quiet confidence that cannot be shaken by the actions or opinions of others. This confidence is not arrogance, it is calm assurance. You no longer need constant reassurance, because you have learned to provide it for yourself. In addition, being alone gives you clarity. Life is often complicated by the presence of other people, arguments, misunderstandings, social pressures, and obligations. Solitude removes these layers and allows you to see what matters most. Your mind becomes a clear space where you can reflect on your values, your goals, and your priorities. You can think deeply about what you want to change and what you wish to keep. You can observe yourself without judgment and learn to accept who you are, both your strengths and weaknesses. Solitude is also a way to practice resilience. When you are alone, you face yourself in a raw and honest way. You learn to cope with your own company, to enjoy moments without constant stimulation, and to find contentment without distraction. This resilience strengthens the mind, because it teaches you that you do not need to depend on others to maintain your peace. You learn that the mind has the power to be steady and calm, regardless of external circumstances. Spending time alone gives you the rare chance to nurture your own soul. In a world that constantly asks for your attention, your approval, and your energy, being alone is a form of self-respect. It is a declaration that your inner life matters, and that your thoughts and feelings are worthy of care. You learn to treat your own mind as a friend, to listen to it, and to respond with understanding. In solitude you can develop wisdom, patience, and a sense of calm that others often search for in vain. While surrounded by noise and distraction, true happiness does not come from what others give us, or what we receive from the outside world. Many people spend their lives chasing approval, attention, or material rewards, believing that these things will make them happy. They look to friends, family, social events, or possessions to fill an emptiness that they feel inside. But when happiness depends on external things, it becomes fragile and unpredictable. A small disappointment, a misunderstanding, or a loss can take it away in an instant. True happiness, however, is found in something that cannot be taken from us. It is found in the way we respond to life, in the choices we make, and in the peace we cultivate within our own minds. When we understand that happiness comes from within, we begin to see life differently. External circumstances, such as wealth, recognition, or companionship, are not bad in themselves, but they are not reliable sources of lasting joy. They can change, they can disappear, and they often do. If we tie our happiness to them, we become like a ship tossed by waves, always at the mercy of forces beyond our control. True contentment comes from learning to be steady regardless of what happens outside. It comes from training the mind to appreciate what we have, to accept what we cannot change, and to focus on what is within our power. This understanding frees us from the constant need to seek validation. When happiness depends on others, we become anxious about their opinions, fearful of rejection, and easily hurt by criticism. We constantly measure ourselves against people around us, comparing our lives, our achievements, and even our appearances. This creates stress and dissatisfaction because there will always be someone who seems to have more, be more, or do more. By realizing that happiness is internal, we no longer need to rely on these comparisons. Our sense of worth and our contentment are not dictated by others, they come from how we think, act, and respond. Happiness from within also teaches self-control. When we are not dependent on external pleasures, we are less likely to be swept away by desires or impulses. We can enjoy things without being attached to them, appreciate moments without clinging to them, and face challenges without losing our calm. We learn that life is a series of events, and our task is not to demand that they all go our way, but to meet them with clarity, reason, and calmness. This mindset does not make life dull or joyless. On the contrary, it allows every experience to be richer because we are fully present, fully aware, and fully in control of our response. Understanding that happiness is internal also builds resilience. Life is unpredictable. People disappoint us, circumstances change, and loss is inevitable. If we depend on external sources for happiness, we are constantly vulnerable to these shifts. When happiness comes from within, we are not immune to hardship, but we are less shaken by it. We can face difficulties with a steady heart, knowing that our inner peace is not tied to fleeting events. This strength allows us to move through life with confidence and calm, without being controlled by fear or desire. Happiness from within encourages gratitude. When we stop looking for fulfillment outside, we start to notice what we already have. A warm home, a quiet moment, the breath in our lungs, the thoughts in our mind. These become sources of contentment. We learn to appreciate life as it is, rather than constantly longing for what it is not. This gratitude grows naturally when we realize that our joy does not depend on gifts, parties, or praise, but on how we cultivate our own mind. Finally, internal happiness fosters independence. When we rely on ourselves for contentment, we are free. Free from the need to impress, free from anxiety over rejection, free from the endless cycle of chasing external rewards. We learn that we have everything we need within our own mind to live well. This freedom is quiet, steady, and enduring. It is not flashy or loud, but it is unshakable. By choosing to cultivate happiness from within, we build a life that is less dependent on circumstance, more peaceful, and more truly our own. Spending Christmas alone builds self-reliance in ways that no celebration with others can. When we are surrounded by people, we often depend on them for comfort, amusement, and a sense of purpose. We measure our enjoyment by how others react, how they treat us, or how we feel in comparison to them. But when we choose to be alone, we remove this dependency. We face ourselves directly and learn that our contentment does not need anyone else. This is the essence of self-reliance, the ability to find peace, strength, and satisfaction within our own mind and actions, rather than relying on external sources to supply them. Being alone teaches us to trust ourselves. In solitude, we cannot blame others for our moods, our happiness, or our sense of fulfillment. We must look inward and acknowledge that the power to feel calm, joyful, or strong lies in our own thoughts and choices. This realization is both challenging and liberating. At first, it may feel uncomfortable to sit with oneself without distraction. Thoughts may seem loud, memories may arise, and emotions may surface that we usually avoid, but it is precisely in this process that self-reliance is built. We learn that we can endure our own presence, guide our own mind, and maintain our own peace, even without anyone else to lean on. Self-reliance also means taking responsibility for our own happiness. When we are alone, we cannot wait for someone else to entertain us, to cheer us up, or to make the day special. We must create it ourselves. We make choices about how to spend our time, what to think about, and how to respond to life. We learn that joy is an act, a decision, and a habit, rather than a gift we receive from the outside. This habit strengthens us because it places the control of our life firmly in our own hands. When we can rely on ourselves to meet our own needs, we become steady and resilient, no longer vulnerable to the unpredictable moods or actions of others. Solitude also encourages independence of thought. When surrounded by others, we are often influenced by their opinions, judgments, and expectations. We may act, speak, or feel in ways that please them, even if it does not align with our true self. Alone, we are free from these pressures. We can think clearly, examine our values, and choose our actions according to what we believe is right. This independence strengthens character, because we learn to act from principle, rather than from desire for approval. We practice making decisions for ourselves, even when they are difficult, knowing that the quality of our life depends on the choices we make within our own mind. Self-reliance cultivated in solitude also builds emotional resilience. Life is full of disappointments, conflicts, and challenges. If we depend on others to protect us from pain, or to provide comfort, we may crumble when they are not available. But when we learn to stand alone, we develop the ability to face difficulties calmly. We learn to console ourselves, to reflect on problems rationally, and to respond to adversity without panic. This strength comes from repeated practice in solitude. where we confront ourselves honestly and cultivate the ability to remain steady, no matter what happens outside. Being alone for a day like Christmas, when everyone else seems busy with others, also allows us to reflect on our life without distraction. We can evaluate what we truly want, what habits serve us, and what changes we might need. This reflection is a key aspect of self-reliance, because it encourages us to act intentionally, rather than being carried along by social rhythms or the opinions of others. By making decisions consciously and acting in accordance with our own reason, we strengthen the part of ourselves that is independent, capable, and wise. Finally, spending time alone demonstrates that we are enough for ourselves. It is a quiet confidence that says we do not need constant validation, attention, or companionship to live a meaningful life. We can enjoy our own company, guide our own thoughts, and cultivate our own peace. This is the essence of self-reliance, knowing that we have the power within ourselves to live well, to be happy, and to meet life with calmness and strength. Alone time allows for reflection on the past year and personal growth in a way that is nearly impossible when surrounded by others. Life moves quickly, and the days often pass in a blur of tasks, responsibilities, and social interactions. We are pulled in multiple directions, constantly responding to the needs and expectations of others. In such a life, it is easy to lose sight of ourselves, to drift without noticing who we have become or where we are headed. When we spend time alone, especially on a day like Christmas that encourages stillness, we create a space to pause, to look back, and to examine our journey. This reflection is essential for growth, because without understanding the past, we cannot shape the future with clarity and intention. Being alone gives us the opportunity to see our own actions without distraction. We can think about the choices we made over the past months, the decisions that brought us peace, and the ones that caused difficulty. We can consider the moments when we acted with patience, courage, or kindness, and recognize the times when we acted out of fear, anger, or weakness. Reflection allows us to take responsibility for ourselves, to see patterns of behavior, and to learn from our mistakes. In solitude, there is no need to hide, to explain, or to justify. We can look honestly at who we are, and this honesty is the foundation of personal growth. Alone, we also gain the chance to contemplate our values and priorities. In the company of others, we are often influenced by their expectations, habits, and judgments. We may follow routines or pursue goals that are not truly ours simply because it is easier or more comfortable. When we are alone, we can ask ourselves difficult questions. What matters most to me? What kind of person do I want to become? Am I living in alignment with my principles? These questions are uncomfortable, but they are necessary for growth. Solitude gives us the clarity to see what is essential, and to recognize what is superficial or unnecessary in our lives. Reflection in solitude also strengthens our ability to face the future with intention. When we take the time to examine our past year, we can identify areas for improvement and set goals for the coming months. We can plan how to act with more patience, courage, or wisdom, and consider the steps needed to develop the qualities we value. This kind of reflection is not about guilt or regret. It is about understanding and preparation. By facing ourselves honestly, we equip our minds to act more thoughtfully and deliberately, rather than reacting impulsively to life's challenges. Being alone allows us to reconnect with our own passions and interests. Often, our time is consumed by fulfilling obligations, participating in social rituals, or accommodating the desires of others. In solitude, we can remember what truly excites us, what brings us joy, and what inspires creativity and thoughtfulness. This reconnection helps us grow not only in knowledge and wisdom, but also in a deeper understanding of ourselves. We learn what is truly fulfilling, rather than what is convenient or expected. Alone time also gives us the chance to practice gratitude. By reflecting on the year in quiet, we notice the moments of growth, the people who influenced us, the lessons we learned, and the experiences that shaped us. Gratitude deepens our awareness of life's richness, even in the face of challenges. It teaches us to appreciate our own efforts and resilience, and it strengthens our ability to find contentment internally, rather than seeking it constantly from external sources. Reflection in solitude ultimately allows us to take control of our own life story. We begin to see that the past is a teacher, the present is a moment for conscious action, and the future is shaped by the choices we make today. Through quiet examination, we cultivate the ability to live intentionally, to act wisely, and to grow steadily toward the person we wish to become. Spending time alone makes it easier to live simply and practice gratitude, two qualities that are often lost in the rush of everyday life. When we are surrounded by people, events, and endless distractions, it is easy to overlook the small blessings that are already present. We may find ourselves constantly reaching for more attention, more entertainment, more possessions, or more approval. In solitude, however, we are freed from these pressures. We no longer feel compelled to impress others or compare our lives to theirs. Instead, we can focus on what is truly essential, noticing the value of simple things and the quiet richness of life that often goes unappreciated. Simplicity is not just about having less, it is about seeing clearly what is necessary. When we are alone, we can observe our habits, routines, and desires without distraction. We can question whether we are chasing things because we genuinely need them, or because we are influenced by society, trends, or the expectations of others. This clarity allows us to remove what is unnecessary and focus on what truly matters. Perhaps it is a warm home, a nourishing meal, or a moment of quiet reflection. Perhaps it is the ability to think freely, to act according to our principles, or to enjoy the small wonders of nature. Simplicity is not deprivation, it is freedom. It frees the mind from clutter, distraction, and attachment, allowing us to experience life more fully. Alone time also encourages gratitude, because we begin to notice what we already have. Without constant social input, we are more aware of the gifts present in our lives. A quiet morning, the sound of the wind, the warmth of a fire, or the comfort of a meal becomes a source of appreciation, rather than something taken for granted. Gratitude is a practice of attention, noticing the small blessings and acknowledging that they are sufficient. When we are alone, we are better able to cultivate this awareness because there is no external noise to distract us from it. We start to see that life is rich, not because of what we acquire or who surrounds us, but because of the simple experiences that are always available if we pay attention. Simplicity and gratitude also teach contentment. Many people feel restless or dissatisfied because they constantly seek what they do not have. They compare themselves to others, longing for possessions, achievements, or recognition. In solitude, we are encouraged to find satisfaction within. We realize that happiness does not require excess, constant stimulation, or social validation. The mind learns to enjoy the present, to see completeness in the small, and to rest without craving. This contentment is quiet but steady, a form of happiness that is not dependent on fleeting circumstances or the presence of others. Being alone also allows us to reflect on our values in a simpler, more grounded way. Without distraction, we can ask ourselves what is truly important and recognize that many of our worries, desires, and ambitions are superficial or imposed by society. We can focus on cultivating qualities like patience, kindness, wisdom, and self-control, which bring lasting satisfaction. This focus on essentials rather than excess strengthens the mind and creates a sense of inner peace that cannot be shaken by external events. Alone time nurtures mindfulness as well. When we are not distracted by social obligations or external noise, we become more aware of the present moment. We notice the taste of food, the beauty of a sunset, the rhythm of our breath, and the thoughts that pass through our mind. Mindfulness and gratitude are connected because awareness allows us to appreciate what we have. We begin to see that life itself, in its simplest form, is enough, and that contentment is not found in accumulation, but in presence. Living simply and practicing gratitude in solitude ultimately strengthens our ability to remain steady in life. When we can appreciate what we have, act according to our principles, and enjoy our own company, we are no longer dependent on external circumstances for happiness. We learn that the mind, when cultivated, can create its own richness and satisfaction, independent of the chaos or demands of the world around us. Spending Christmas alone cultivates peace of mind, because it removes the pressures, distractions, and expectations that so often disturb our inner calm. In the presence of others, even during joyful celebrations, we can feel tension, anxiety, or worry. We may think about whether we are being judged, whether we are meeting expectations, or whether we are behaving correctly. We may feel the weight of social obligations to entertain, to converse, or to appear cheerful even when we do not feel it. These pressures, though often subtle, can cloud the mind and prevent us from experiencing true serenity. When we are alone, we are freed from these disturbances. Our mind is no longer pulled in multiple directions, and we can experience a calm that is rare in ordinary life. Peace of mind begins with control over our own thoughts. When alone, we can observe the mind without interference. We notice which thoughts are useful, which are harmful, and which are unnecessary. We can examine our emotions without being swept away by them, recognizing anger, fear, or sadness as natural responses rather than commands we must obey. In solitude, we learn to respond rather than react. This practice strengthens the mind, because the more we can direct our thoughts and emotions, the more we maintain a steady inner life. Our happiness becomes less dependent on what happens outside, and more rooted in how we manage what happens within. Being alone also allows us to detach from the need for approval. When surrounded by others, we often seek affirmation, approval, or validation. We may adjust our behavior to fit the desires of those around us, fearing disapproval or rejection. This constant concern pulls the mind away from its own stability. In solitude, we remove the influence of external judgment. We learn that our peace is not dictated by the opinions of others. We discover that approval is not necessary for contentment, and that the mind has the power to remain steady even without praise, attention, or recognition. This realization is liberating, because it teaches us that our inner state is under our control. Solitude also provides the opportunity to reflect without distraction. In the quiet, we can examine the events of the year, the challenges we faced, and the choices we made. We can think clearly about what served us and what did not, about the moments when we acted with wisdom, and the moments when we fell short. This reflection deepens our understanding of ourselves and our world. It gives clarity to our actions and intentions, which is a critical part of peace of mind. When we understand ourselves, we are less likely to be disturbed by minor irritations, misunderstandings, or frustrations. because we see them in perspective, rather than reacting impulsively. Being alone also encourages acceptance. Life is unpredictable, and people, events, and circumstances are often beyond our control. When we rely on others or external circumstances for our happiness, we are vulnerable to disappointment and frustration. In solitude, we focus on what is within our control: our thoughts, choices, and responses. We accept the world as it is, without being dominated by it. This acceptance does not mean passivity. It means understanding the limits of our influence and focusing energy on what truly matters. This focus brings calm, because the mind is no longer chasing what it cannot change. Finally, solitude allows the mind to rest. Constant social interaction, obligations, and stimulation can exhaust mental energy. In quiet, we recover, renew, and strengthen the capacity for rational thought and emotional balance. Peace of mind grows naturally when we give ourselves space, when we are free from noise and expectation, and when we learn to enjoy the stillness that solitude provides. Spending time alone teaches patience, humility, and contentment in a way that is difficult to achieve when we are constantly surrounded by others. Life is full of moments that test our ability to wait, to endure, and to accept what comes without complaint. When we are always with people, we often seek immediate satisfaction, constant stimulation, and the approval of others. We may grow frustrated if events do not go as planned or if people do not respond the way we hope. In solitude, however, we learn to slow down and face ourselves without distraction. We have the space to practice patience, because there is no one else dictating the pace of our thoughts or actions. We learn that we do not need instant gratification to be happy, and that a calm, steady mind is more rewarding than a mind constantly chasing pleasure. Patience is strengthened when we are alone, because we are forced to confront our own impulses. We notice when we become restless, when we want something to happen immediately, or when we seek comfort or distraction. Solitude provides the perfect environment to observe these tendencies without judgment and to practice restraint. We learn to wait, to breathe, and to respond thoughtfully rather than react impulsively. Each moment of patience we cultivate builds resilience and inner strength, allowing us to remain steady in the face of challenges and uncertainty. In this way, alone time becomes training for the mind, teaching us that true satisfaction comes not from external events, but from the calmness we carry within ourselves. Humility also grows in solitude, because we are reminded that our worth is not dependent on the opinions or approval of others. When surrounded by people, it is easy to become preoccupied with how we appear, how others perceive us, or whether we are measuring up to expectations. Solitude removes this pressure and allows us to see ourselves clearly, without embellishment or pretense. We are reminded of our limitations, of the areas where we still need growth, and of the smallness of our place in the larger world. Recognizing these truths does not diminish us. Rather, it fosters a sense of groundedness. Humility teaches us to accept ourselves as we are while striving to improve, without arrogance or the need for constant recognition. Contentment is closely linked to patience and humility, and solitude nurtures it naturally. When we are alone, we learn to appreciate the simple things that are always present: a warm home, food to eat, quiet moments of reflection, or even the breath in our lungs. We discover that happiness is not dependent on constant social interaction, material possessions, or external achievements. Instead, it grows from the ability to find satisfaction in what is, to enjoy the present, and to accept life without unnecessary longing. This form of contentment is deep and steady, not fleeting or dependent on circumstance. It teaches us that peace can be cultivated internally, and that our minds can provide a constant source of satisfaction, regardless of what happens outside. Solitude also gives us the time to reflect on our actions and attitudes with honesty and clarity. We can examine whether we are impatient, arrogant, or restless, and take steps to correct ourselves. This self-awareness is a cornerstone of personal growth, because we cannot improve what we do not see. Alone, we are free from distraction, and this allows the mind to focus on the qualities that truly matter: patience in difficult situations, humility in recognizing our limits, and contentment with what we have. In learning these qualities, we become less dependent on external circumstances for our happiness. We are better prepared to handle life's challenges because we have practiced patience in stillness, embraced humility in self-reflection, and cultivated contentment in simplicity. These qualities, developed through time alone, strengthen the mind, steady the emotions, and provide a foundation for living a life that is calm, resilient, and wise. The best gift we can give ourselves is inner peace and steady, lasting joy, and spending time alone provides the perfect opportunity to cultivate this gift. Most people search for happiness in external things, gifts, social interactions, recognition, or accomplishments, believing that these will bring fulfillment. Yet these sources of happiness are fragile, temporary, and beyond our control. When we rely on them, our mood rises and falls like the tide, depending entirely on circumstances we cannot manage. True joy, the kind that endures regardless of what happens around us, comes from the mind itself. It comes from understanding that we have the power to remain calm, content, and satisfied, no matter the chaos or uncertainty of life. Spending time alone allows us to focus on this inner cultivation without distraction, creating a foundation for peace that is unshakable. When we are alone, we are free to examine our thoughts and emotions honestly. We can observe what disturbs us, what excites us, and what brings us calm. This awareness is the first step in cultivating lasting joy. By recognizing the nature of our mind, we can learn to guide it intentionally. We discover that feelings of anger, frustration, or longing are not commands we must obey, but phenomena we can watch and understand. This insight allows us to respond wisely rather than react impulsively. Over time, this practice strengthens the mind and builds resilience, creating a steady sense of satisfaction that does not rely on external circumstances. Inner peace also grows when we learn to appreciate the present moment. When surrounded by others, especially during festive seasons, our attention is often drawn outward, toward social expectations, comparisons, and obligations. We may feel pressure to appear happy, to entertain, or to measure our joy against the experiences of others. In solitude, this pressure disappears. We can fully inhabit the present moment, appreciating what is directly in front of us. The quiet of being alone allows us to notice small, often overlooked blessings: the warmth of a room, the taste of food, the rhythm of our own breath, or the thoughts that pass through our mind. This mindful appreciation nurtures contentment and strengthens the mind's ability to remain calm and joyful, independent of outside circumstances. Another aspect of inner peace cultivated in solitude is freedom from external judgment. When our happiness depends on the opinions of others, we are constantly vulnerable to criticism, comparison, and disapproval. These influences can disturb our minds and shake our sense of self. Alone, we are free from these pressures. We can learn to value our own thoughts, decisions, and principles above the fleeting opinions of others. This independence strengthens the mind and allows us to maintain steady joy, even in the face of challenges, misunderstandings, or isolation. Spending time alone also encourages reflection on our life and our values, which deepens our understanding of what truly matters. We can consider the year that has passed, the lessons we have learned, and the kind of person we want to become. By reflecting on our choices, we gain insight into which habits bring lasting satisfaction, and which bring only temporary pleasure. This clarity allows us to live more intentionally, focusing our energy on what strengthens our mind, cultivates virtue, and promotes calm. In solitude, we can also practice gratitude, another pillar of steady joy. By noticing the simple blessings in life, the small comforts, the abilities we possess, and the lessons we have learned, we train our mind to focus on abundance rather than lack. Gratitude reminds us that our contentment is not dependent on external circumstances, but grows naturally when we recognize what we already have. This practice reinforces inner peace and helps us remain resilient when life presents challenges. Finally, spending time alone teaches us that joy is an inside job. We are not reliant on others for happiness, nor are we controlled by events beyond our power. Instead, we discover that the mind itself can generate steady, lasting contentment. Inner peace is cultivated through reflection, gratitude, clarity, and self-mastery, all of which are made possible by solitude. This understanding is the ultimate gift, a joy that is calm, enduring, and fully within our control.